I would like to introduce Joshua. Joshua Waldman is considered by a lot an authority on leveraging social media to find employment. He is the author of Job Searching with Social Media for Dummies, and his writing has appeared in Forbes, Huffington Post, Mashable, and the International Business Times. Joshua writes a career blog. It's called CareerEnlightenment.com, and he won the About.com Reader's Choice Award for Best Career Blog in 2013. When he's not writing, Joshua presents keynotes, trainings, breakout sessions around the world for students, career advisors, consortiums, and professional organizations. We are lucky today to have Joshua with us. He was actually invited to come on campus and offered to also present to alumni and to talk a little bit about issues that are more alumni-centric. As I mentioned, he is a Brown alum from the class of 2000, and I would like to welcome you here today, Joshua.
Thanks, Heather. Absolute pleasure to be back on campus. I grew up here, went to Brown, graduated in 2000, and I've been on campus since then. My mom lives in Providence, and it's the first opportunity I've had to come back and really contribute to the alumni community here, and so it's an absolute honor to be here in this beautiful historical building on campus overlooking the main green.
Thanks for joining us.
So before I go into some of these very, very important social media career topics, I want to start off with a little story about my own career. Most recently, back in 2009, when I first moved to Portland, Oregon, where I still live, I had no idea of the important and painful life lesson I was about to learn that a lot of people learned during the Great Recession. Now, Portland overall was a pretty good move for us. The job I had paid really well. Culturally, it was a good fit. Lots of vegetarian restaurants in Portland, so as a vegetarian, it was great. But the realities of the economy at the time really were quite dispassionate. And so shortly after moving to Portland, my largest customer, who was with a Cisco reseller, reduced their workforce literally by 20%. And Portland was ranked at the time 4th in unemployment, just beneath Detroit. So having been laid off about 6 months prior, I knew what was coming, and it did not feel very good at all, being out of control like that. And in fact, I remember the day I was laid off for that second time. It was absolutely surreal. I could not believe that this was happening. And it felt like, the worst part of that, I think, was feeling like I didn't have any options for that next move. So in the next few months, I learned some important lessons, and I'd like to share some of them with you here today. You see, the day I was laid off was actually, looking back, it was the best day of my whole life. But I didn't know it at the time. Up until then, I was kind of like a leaf in the wind. I had a degree from Brown, and I thought, that's probably good enough to get me into a well-paying job. And although it helped, it certainly couldn't guarantee that it was the right job for me or that I would keep it for any length of time. So getting laid off twice in a row really forced me to confront this attitude that I had and regain that sense of control and meaning in my life and in my career. I was absolutely determined not to be that leaf anymore and to take back control. And I discovered, and I'll share with you some of these things that I discovered, that I actually had more control over my career than I thought. And in fact, I had more control than what most career counselors at the unemployment office thought when they told me that it would take me 6 months back in 2009 just to land that job interview. But with what I discovered with social media and in the job search, I actually had interviews lined up within a week. And I'll show you how I did that. And all I did really was use social media in a way that made sense to me as far as I understood networking and overall job search strategy. And so over the months after getting laid off, I refined those skills. I turned them into frameworks and strategies, which ultimately became my blog and what I teach now on a daily basis. So when I first started sharing these techniques, I thought it was just me. But when I started to share them, I realized it wasn't. Most people who were struggling with either recovering from getting laid off or trying to find work or promotion, we're finding a lot of great deal of success with this. In fact, Jeffrey Smith was looking for work for 6 months. Came to a LinkedIn seminar that I gave in Portland at an unemployment, a job searching club. He took some of my advice, and literally in 1 week he had 17 inquiries coming in. Carmen, a little bit of a different situation. She was a contractor with a company that she really wanted to get promoted into a full-time job with. And she took control of her online reputation, and she got hired as full-time. And not only that, but now she works overseas in the Netherlands, which is a really great adventure for her. I've been thinking a lot about this, and let's face facts, right? The only inevitable outcome of a job is that you don't have it anymore, right? I mean, that's just the reality in one way or another. So we could either start from scratch each time in between jobs, or we can build momentum between positions, building up on that body of work that we've been contributing to the world. So this information we're going to go through today is for everyone. Anyone who is serious about finding meaning and control of their career and regaining that sense of destiny and meaning. So it's not just for active job seekers. Even if you're gainfully employed, I'm sure you'll benefit from this information, because your online reputation, your personal brand will accumulate and it will follow you as long as the internet is around. Back in 2009, the only thing that, if you were to Google me, the only thing you would find was that I designed lights for the spring dance concert at Brown University in 1997. And as a technology sales rep with experience at Cisco, it wasn't exactly the kind of thing I really wanted people to find out about me. Not that it was shameful, but it had nothing to do with my career. And I was using LinkedIn to network on a daily basis back then, and I had great results because I had a pretty good profile. But what would happen if someone Googled me, right? And so I really wanted to take back control of that. Google is going to happen to you. You are going to get Googled. Companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers actually make Googling candidates part of their standard operating procedure. And just as you're researching companies that you're interested in, or even hiring managers that you've met or interviewed with, likewise, you are getting looked up. That's just the reality of it. And let's call this our Google resume. We'll talk about that in a moment here. Now, as far as LinkedIn's importance in the role of your career, it really is undoubtable at this point. This is the Society of Human Resource Management did a study, and they found that 95% of recruiters actually, this is an important word, rely on LinkedIn and other social media to hire. Rely. And this is a study that's about 2 years old now. Another study from JobVite found that 50% of hiring managers who use social media to recruit, which is most of them, have had to reject someone because of, well, something they found out about them online. So that means being able to control that first impression is so important. A lot of people don't realize this, but social networks like Facebook, 18 million Americans say that Facebook got them their current job. 18 million. That's 8 million more than LinkedIn. So yes, LinkedIn is very important, but so are the other social networks if you look at the real statistics of how people are networking and getting referred into work. As an early adopter of social media, I knew that I could change how I showed up online and drastically impact my chances of finding meaningful work. And after years of research and writing about this, I'm going to share with you some of the most powerful tools that I can in the limited time that we have together. Because, I mean, the reality is that most people, when something unsavory shows up about them online, like this picture of Mark Zuckerberg in college, we don't have the kind of influence he might have to pick up the phone, call Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, and have that removed. We need to do other things. We need to manage this in a way that makes more sense with our situation. In Seth Godin's book called Lynchpin, Seth talks about successful people becoming indispensable to their organization, and he calls these linchpins. These are people who are in control of their brand and communicate their unique skills, but most importantly, according to Seth, and I agree, that they know how to invest their emotional energy in the right ways, right? And then there's others, like the way that I was for many years, like a leaf blowing in the wind. So are you a linchpin or a leaf? We're going to talk about the distinction, the choices you can make today with how you're engaging with technology so that you become that linchpin. You're in control of your destiny, of the meaning in your life, of your career. There's a great story about this that Seth gives in the book, Linchpin, where he's checking out at a grocery store and he's greeted by someone who's really, really interested in him. And this is just someone bagging his groceries, but he's totally present in the moment with Seth as he's checking out. Now here's a guy who's probably never going to lose his job because he's so good at making the customers happy. But on the other hand, the question is, could he be doing something else, something more? So we're going to talk about that difference between, are you a linchpin with how you show up on LinkedIn and Facebook and Google, or are you the leaf? So today, that's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about three main issues here. First, I want to find out kind of where you are. And I'm going to help you assess your current online reputation and personal brand. And we can do this literally in about 5 minutes. I'll show you a very, very cool algorithm, an equation that you can use to get your Google grade, and we'll start off with that. Next, we're going to talk about how to actually build your personal brand online and what that means. We'll talk about personal branding and how you can have one relatively quickly. It's not as complicated as some people think. And then we'll talk about how to take that brand and translate that into building a very powerful, consistent, job-attracting online reputation. And then very quickly before we end today, I'll give you some tips on how to maintain your personal brand over time so that you're not having to invest too much energy in these bits and spurts, and so that you can check maybe every couple of months to make sure everything's on track. And this is an important skill to maintain throughout your career. So let's start with assessing how you are online. How do you show up online? When I Googled myself back in 2009, I didn't like what I saw. But if you were to Google me now, most of those first 3 pages of Google are going to be dominated with things that I have been working on that are relevant to my business and what I write about. These are things that I want you to find out about me, and you can make that choice as well. So let's find out how you guys are with your Google grade. This is I'm going to give you some instructions, and I know we didn't have to take math classes at Brown. I didn't, but so you can use a calculator. But hopefully this is simple enough that we can all very quickly find out what our grade is. So what you can do is go ahead and open a fresh browser window. You can, from WebEx, you can open up a browser and visit Google. And what I want you to do is type your name in using quotation marks around your name. So it'll be, for me, it would be quotation, Joshua Waldman, end quotation, and I'm going to search. Once you do that, I want you to count, number one, how many total results you got in your first 3 pages. Usually there are 30. The first 3 pages of your Google search result. Total number there is probably going to be around 30. So go ahead and grab that, and then go back to those first 3 pages. And what I want you to do is write down how many of those results that are about you show up. So of the 30 that are showing up for your name, how many are actually about you? Is it 10, 20, 25? And then of those that are about you, are there any negative ones? We might not know what's out there until we look. So here's the math. What I want you to do is subtract the negative ones from your total overall and divide that, put that into your total results, right? So you're going to get a grade. In this example, and I hope you guys follow along, and you can definitely ask some questions if you're getting stuck. But in this example, I did a search for my name, and I found 30 results in the first 3 pages of Google. 25 of those results are actually about me. Not too bad. But, and this is just an example, of those 25 results about me, 3 of them are less than positive. So I'm going to subtract that. I'm going to get 22 divided by 30. That's 73%. So I got a C minus. So if you guys, and I'd love
If
to know
Joshua, if you have a C minus, what does that mean for the rest of us?
This, again, was just an example.
So I have a question here. If you have a common name, the reason that you aren't, let's see, your name, so the reason there aren't many about you, but because there are people with the same name, or do you advise adding a plus or anything, plus your company, for example?
If you have a common name, this is a great, great question. If you have a common name, pop in a middle initial. That's the fastest way to differentiate from somebody else. If you have put that middle initial in and you're still getting a lot of other people, you can try qualifiers like your location or your industry or your degree designation. But the reality is that this is the experience that a hiring manager might actually have when they're looking you up. So if you have that common name, realize that this is a bit of a danger, and I'll talk about that danger and some things you can do. But start branding yourself with that middle initial to begin to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I think that's lucky. I always feel at least happy that when I Google Heather Wilkerson, there's some famous artist in Atlanta where I used to live whose name comes up about 10 times more than mine. So I'm like, well, at least she's doing something interesting.
Yeah, right. Right, and you know what? It's not anything to be terribly concerned about. I think hiring managers and recruiters know that there's the possibility that it's not you showing up. This is just to get a very, very quick assessment of how things are going. So I'm curious, what grade did you get?
Come on, people, send me your grades. I have a lot of comments. I'm getting famous athletes. You know, my name's not really showing much. Let's see. One person has a C minus. Another person has an A minus. So that was good. I've got a couple of C's on there.
Okay. Okay. Good. A's. We got mostly C's. You know, C's aren't so bad.
I have an F and a 0. That's not so good. 77.
Yeah.
87.
So here's the deal. You know, this isn't meant to scare you. It's to give you a sense of how much work you need to put into this. If you have a C or less, what I'm going to talk about today, you need to take very seriously and commit some time to develop that personal brand and that online reputation. If you're getting a B or an A, you can spend a little bit less time, right? You might only need to spend a couple of hours this month to get things up and running. Anything lower than that, I would say, really need to start focusing on building up that online reputation. It matters a lot. It matters a lot more than what most people think. So there's actually a really funny story. There's a company called BrandYourself.com, which was started by 4 Syracuse University students about 4 years ago, before the first edition of My 4 Dummies book came out. And Peter, the CEO, encountered a problem. He was trying to get internships, but he had the same name as a convicted drug dealer in the Syracuse area. And so what would happen is he would go for these internships, and he was a good student, and he qualified, but he kept getting rejected, and he didn't understand why. And finally, he got a little fed up, and he got in touch with one of the people who rejected him. And he said, you know, what is going on here? And they said, you know, I'm sorry, Peter, but we looked you up on Google, and we thought you had a criminal record. And he Googled himself for the first time and realized, indeed, it looks very much like he was convicted of drug dealing. So he got together with some friends, a developer, a marketing person, and they developed a software called Brand Yourself, and they've actually done quite well. They've gone through several rounds of funding. I think they raised $6 or $7 million of funding in one of their first or second rounds. So they're doing really well. It's a great tool. I'd encourage you, if you use this URL at the top, they'll know that you came from me, and they may offer you something. I'm not sure how that works, but they told me to use this link, and if you guys would like to use their product, it's absolutely free. It just tells them that I sent them over to them from me. So check that out, and you can do your Google grade there as well and get some tips on improving your online reputation. All right, so now that you know how things are for you when somebody Googles you, let's talk about what you can actually do about it. And hopefully you're not totally freaked out, but you're feeling optimistic. Like now that you know where things are, it's kind of a level setting. So use your Google grade to figure out how much work you'll need to build your new online reputation. I mean, the fact is even Lady Gaga, who is the #1 most searched person in the world, she searches for herself regularly to make sure that she's in control of how her personal brand is showing up. So speaking of Lady Gaga, what is this whole thing about personal branding? It's a topic that most presentations about LinkedIn don't even touch. Most presentations about LinkedIn will tell you the features of the tool and how great it is and how it can help you network, which is all true and it's fantastic, and I encourage you to learn as much about LinkedIn as possible. But there are other social networks, as we saw, that can have a very big impact on you finding work. And very few of these technology-based trainings tell you what to actually say in your profiles. The linchpin, the person who's taking control of their sense of meaning and purpose in their career, spends time worrying about that message, how they're coming across to their target audience, and not so much about the tool they're using. That's secondarily important. You've probably been on other webinars that talk about this, and so we're not going to go into too much technical detail about LinkedIn, but what I want to share with you is kind of an overarching strategy that you can use to figure out what to actually say when you're learning how to use these tools. The point of warning, and I want to make sure I'm upfront about this, that these tools make it as easy as possible to create accounts with them. You know, by my last pass at this, I saw that it takes less than 5 minutes to set up a LinkedIn account. You can literally upload your resume and have a LinkedIn account ready in 5 minutes. And the reason why they make these things so easy, if you really think about the business reason here, is that the more users they have on their network, the more money they make from funding, from shareholders, from the market. So they make it as easy as possible for you to sign up. But that's not necessarily in your best interest. The question is, do you really want to treat the highest leverage tools at your disposal for success so flippantly? You know, your focus, again, it's on quality, not the quantity that these networks are trying to build. So I'm just curious, and I just want to kind of get a sense from you guys. What is your sense of the results of using LinkedIn? You've been using social media. I'm assuming you're interested in using it better by being on this webinar. But specifically on LinkedIn, what is your sense of its effect on your life? And I'm curious if there's anyone who wants to share that on chat. Has it been useful, not useful? Are you happy with the results of using LinkedIn?
Well, I will send that out there, Josh. And we'll see what people have to say. But I'm really curious to hear some of the ways you want us to use these tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so before we get into the tool, we really need to figure out what your brand is. Taking the time to think about your personal brand is something most people don't do. And by doing it, you're going to find that the use of these tools is just going to be much, much easier. So I am going to spend some time talking about personal branding before we even get into the technology. And I think you'll find that this is an approach that makes a lot of sense. So what is personal branding? Well, personal branding is the promise that you are making to your audience. Okay, it's the promise you're making to your audience. Knowing what your personal brand is going to help you make decisions about your career and also what to put online. There are two main parts of a personal brand. There's what I call the you sphere. Here it's on the left, who you are. This is really about introspection. This is about figuring out what your values are. What are you willing to walk away from? Let's say, for example, you really value the environment, and you get an offer for, I don't know, $1 million from an oil company, and you know your job is going to be contributing to ruining the ocean. Would you take the job? Probably not, no matter how much they paid you. That's something that's unmovable and uncompromising about who you are, and that's something to really get in touch with. I had a I had a client named Brooke who knew her brand really, really well. I'll show you her picture in a couple of slides here, but she was very playful. That was her brand, playfulness, creativity. And so she knew that about herself, right? And so she put in her LinkedIn profile a fun picture, a picture of herself actually playing a video game, Rockstar Guitar. And when she started reaching out to new contacts, she knew that the company she wanted to work for also highly valued creativity and playfulness. So when she was networking into that company, they saw that brand, saw that it was in alignment with who they were, and she actually wound up with that job. She was not wearing a suit or a tie. She was playing rock star guitar. That's something to really think about. Know your brand first so that you can make those kinds of decisions. So just like Brooke took some time to figure out what her core values and strengths were, her winning personality traits, what I want you to do is to spend some time doing that. My favorite exercise, and there are many ways to figure this out, but my favorite one to teach in all of the books and curriculum that I offer is this one, where you pick 3 people who you admire the most. So when you have a moment after today's webinar, or even right now as I'm describing this, think about 3 people who you admire the most. And then ask yourself this, why did you pick them? Out of all the people in the world who you know about, why did you pick them? They could be relatives, they can be presidents of Brown University, they can be celebrities, civil rights activists, anyone who inspires you. Why did you pick them out of everyone else? What did they stand for in your life? And then what were they willing to sacrifice in order to attain what they attained? Knowing this about yourself is just incredibly important. And I'll show you how that ties into using LinkedIn in just a moment. The next part of your personal brand is the you. It's the they, right? The them. It's the sphere that concerns itself with the interests and the values and the goals of your target audience. So this next part of your personal brand really has to do with conducting a little research, finding out what the needs are. And most people never do this. They're like those leaves. They're not paying attention to how their message is actually going to get rubbed off on their audience. So, you'll see LinkedIn profiles that say things like, I'm searching for, or I'm looking for, but that's very me-focused, right? So what I want you to do is to start thinking about triangulating your research, right? Starting at the very highest levels of your industry. What is going on? Like, if anyone in your industry was worried about something, what would that something be? And so we'll start at the highest level of industry issues. What's going on at the highest level of your industry? Narrowing down, triangulating down, we want to understand what is going on with the company that you are targeting. Now there's a presupposition there, you guys, and that's that you actually have a target list of companies. A lot of people who are interested in advancement and promotions and finding a job have not gotten specific enough with where they actually want to work. I encourage you to do that, because then you can understand really what the goals and needs and challenges are of that company, and then ultimately to the contact person. So let's go through some tools that you can use to triangulate that research for your personal brand. The first one.
Hey Josh, can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
I'm getting a lot of feedback from someone, so if you can all just double check that you're on mute so that it doesn't interrupt the sound for everyone else. Thanks. I also have a lot of comment from how people are using LinkedIn, and most don't feel they're using it quite so effectively. So between this webinar and the next one, I think we're right on track. I did want to mention too that we're at 12:32, so just a note, a time check. Sorry for the interruption.
So the first part of this research really starts at the highest level. Use a website called Alltop. I would write this down, you guys. And by the way, if there are questions about getting these slides and resources, I'm going to go through a ton of great slides and tools and websites that you can use. Heather is going to send out a cheat sheet after the webinar where I'll have all of these links for you. So if you didn't catch it the first time around, you will get a piece of paper that you can print up and use later. For industry research, I highly recommend Alltop. This is human curated news. These are literally hundreds of topics. An expert in that topic is out there actually finding the 5 most important news items in that topic, okay, on the top 100 blogs and news sites for that industry. So I would absolutely start here and try to figure out what the main talking points are of people in the industry that you're trying to get into. Next, as we narrow down, you want to understand what the company initiatives are. And a great resource that many, many people overlook is the Facebook page, the company page. Do you follow the company page of the company that you want to work for? And if so, if you do this, you may get access to information like the company culture, the benefits that you'd receive, the voice and tone and feeling of that company, even your fit and how your personality might fit with that. I know that a lot of these groups are posting job openings that are not going on any other job board. They're just being distributed through their Facebook page. So there's a lot of value of finding the company page and following it of the companies that you're trying to get jobs into. And one of the most important things here is to just read their content. With Schneider Electric here that I'm showing you this example, Smart Grid is a big deal for them. They're an electric company, obviously. They do a lot of different things in that industry, but conservation and energy efficiency seem to be very, very important to them. And that's great information to know to walk into an interview with. Finally, it's actually understanding the people, the interests of the people. So now that you know what company you would like to work for, go ahead and use LinkedIn to do this, but actually start looking at the people who work at that company and pay particular attention to job titles that, number one, are parallel to the title you might want to have. Okay. Number two, job titles of people who may be in a decision-making position for you. So, for example, if you were interested in the sales role at Schneider Electric, you might look at other salespeople and start to emulate what they do. What interests do they seem to have? What groups are they a member of? And then who would hire a salesperson? Well, probably a sales manager or VP of sales. And start looking at those profiles and paying particular attention to how they're showing up. What are they interested in? What goals are they interested in? With LinkedIn, you can actually see what causes people care about, what volunteerism they have, what hobbies they might have. And you'll learn this next in the next webinar from John Hill, something LinkedIn calls pro-personal, which is a new term. It means sort of this edge between professional and personal information that you have access to. Now, your personal brand is bringing these things together. Okay, that means your message is congruent with who you are, and it's relevant to your audience. That's incredibly important. All right, so this is very theoretical. You guys came here for social media. Let's stop talking about branding. Okay, fair enough. But the fact that you've taken the time to learn this and to take these steps is incredible, and you're going to be doing better than 99% of your competition out there just by paying attention to this first step. And by the way, you can the handout that you're going to get is going to give you access to this personal branding table, which you can use to fill out your personal branding information. So what happens when a busy hiring manager goes to LinkedIn to look at your profile? Well, their eye goes to your picture, and then it goes to what I call caption text. Okay, caption text is any text that appears next to, beneath, or as a description of some kind of an image. Okay, so in this case, this is your LinkedIn headline, professional headline, and your summary, your professional summary. What about on Facebook? Again, this is a visual network, so people's eyes are going to go to your picture and to your most recent post. Also on Twitter, again, a visual network. People are going to look at images. They're going to look at your picture and your most recent post. So again, your bio is the caption text. Your picture is important, and so is your most recent post. So we're going to talk about those three things in the next couple of minutes. We're going to talk about that picture. We're going to talk about that caption text, and then how to post. A lot of people are out there online unwilling to put a picture of themselves on their LinkedIn profile or their Twitter profile. And this is a big mistake because, at the end of the day, these are all visual networks. And if you're the profile that doesn't have a picture, well, in a way, that's what stands out to recruiters and hiring managers. It's like, imagine going on a dating site and you're looking for tall, dark, and handsome, right? Well, when you see, and there's no picture of tall, dark, and handsome. Well, what happens to your level of trust? It's like, I mean, the fact that you're on a dating site means that you don't have much trust, in the first place, and then there's no picture. Like, come on, I'm not going to take this person seriously. Well, that's exactly the experience of a recruiter when they're on LinkedIn or any of these social networks. They want to see your picture. If they don't, what are you hiding? You don't want to make them think that. So the question is, what is a good picture? This is Brooke Snow, who I told you about earlier, who was rocking out on her video game. And this picture, believe it or not, you guys, this got her hired. Why? Because her brand, Playfulness, aligned perfectly with the creative design company that she wanted to work for that also highly value creativity. This is industry specific. This is why we do that research. Professional pictures should be consistent across all three networks. So if this was me, I would have the same picture on my LinkedIn as on my Twitter as on my Facebook, particularly when I was looking for a job, because you're getting checked out online. Hands down, this will happen to you. Facebook at the very bottom, Michael Hunter. This is a Facebook image. It is also his LinkedIn image. Facebook, as we saw, is responsible for 8 million more jobs than LinkedIn is. And why is that? It's not necessarily because recruiters are on there. It's because this is where referrals happen. Let's talk about
Hey, Joshua,
Yep.
someone's asking a question. I just thought it was a good time to cover that. How does my picture convey my education or expertise and qualifications? And I know that you don't think that it necessarily does, but it's about getting so that people will look at your education and expertise and qualifications. So do you want to just comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the picture, these are all visual networks, okay? If you don't have a picture, you're not playing the game. Let's just get that on the table. What your picture can communicate is your personal brand, which, as I said, is your promise to the interests of your audience. So it's not necessarily about displaying your qualifications and this and that. What it is showing that you are someone who that audience member, who that perhaps sales manager at the company you want to work for is going to be interested in learning more about. Okay, it's about that curiosity, that, oh, here's someone who's professional looking, who seems to fit into the culture that I'm trying to hire for.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk quickly about caption text. This is any text that is describing an image. In LinkedIn, this is the headline. And John Hill and your presenters in the next webinar are going to talk more about how that headline shows up. But suffice it to say that this is probably the most important part of any of your profiles. This is your bio, your About Me section on Facebook, your bio on Twitter, and your headline here on LinkedIn. You have 120 characters, and most people get it wrong. Most people get it wrong. This first mistake, Satish Kumar, is simply using his job title. Just using his job title. Let me ask you, how many senior software engineers do you think are in San Francisco Bay Area? A lot. He hasn't differentiated himself. He isn't using that personal brand to his advantage. Joseph Becker is also making a mistake because would you know by looking at this headline that the guy is a vice president of marketing? I wouldn't know. I know him and I know he is. So what you want to be careful about is that you, number one, have your job title in your headline, but don't stop there. Keep going. Keep bringing that personal brand into it. You have 120 characters. Satish could have filled up an entire other line here talking about how he cares about speed to market and quality for the customer and so on and so forth. There's a lot that he could do with that space. So in order to help you guys, both with your profile summary and thinking about what to put in your headline, I've put together 4 questions. Now there are literally 12 different styles of LinkedIn profile writing that I've identified that my writers use when they write LinkedIn profile summaries for clients. We don't have time to go into all 12 of those, but these 4 questions are actually a great way to get started. So for anyone who's looking to figure out, what do I actually say? what do I put there about myself in these spaces that are a little bit daunting when you're first getting started? I get it. It's really hard to do that. So what I want to do is kind of ask you to participate because this webinar is for you. This is your time. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and what I want you to do is to write them down on a piece of paper or open up a text document, and I want you to answer these questions for yourself. And at the end of the 4 questions, I'm going to ask folks if they want to do some live coaching and get a really nice looking headline or a really nice looking profile summary or a bio, that we can spend a couple of minutes together on the webinar working with you to do that. So the first question that you should really be answering in all of your caption text is, who are you? So I'll give you an example. So for me, I would say I am a social media strategist specializing in helping job seekers find meaningful work. It's very simple. This is not one to overthink. Okay, so who are you? I really like the framework I am a blank. You can put in your job title, specializing in, and then you can be more specific about what it is that you do. Okay. The second question is, what do you do? But it's always in the context of the problem you solve. So let's say for me, my target audience are job seekers in this example. So what's their problem? They're getting frustrated that their resume is not doing what it used to do. So what does that mean? Well, I help for me, I would say, so when job seekers are frustrated that their resume isn't getting them where they used to get, I can help them use social media to land that job interview. Right? That's the problem. So for you, what's the problem that you've identified with your target audience, and then how can you help with that problem? That's what this statement is all about. Now, if you notice, these first 2 questions correlate perfectly with those 2 spheres of personal branding, who you are and what they are interested in. Third question is why you are the best at what you do. This one is hard for a lot of people because we're trained by society since we were very young not to brag. So why are you the best at what you do? Well, that could be a story that you tell. Think about a time in your career that you've been the most successful, or that you're the most proud of. What role did you play in that success? Okay, what role did you play in that success? It's really important to articulate that, because if you don't, the person reading your profile is not going to know. And number 4, what do you want? A lot of people leave this off, but this is a call to action. And anyone who's in the marketing industry knows that every good advertising piece needs a call to action. So what do you want? If you're looking for a quota retiring salesperson, give me a call. I am looking for a career in healthcare, IT. What is it that you want? Okay, so that's what you're going to put in this 4th question. Here they are again. I'd love to. We've got maybe 4 minutes. If you would like to share yours, I'd love to learn about you and who's on the call.
So Josh, while people are thinking too, I got a couple of questions. One was, I'm applying for different types of jobs, and the more detail I put into a general website, the more I veer off course for some types of jobs. I know my thoughts on that, but how would you recommend that this person deals with that?
Yeah, it unfortunately is one of the major limitations of these profiles is that you only get one. You can't really customize them. The way I usually advise people to handle that is think about their LinkedIn profile as an inverted pyramid or an upside-down triangle, right? So the very top of the profile is the most important part, and as the profile goes down, it becomes least important. Which of those, the question to ask yourself is, which of those different career aspirations are more likely to be successful for you? And you can base that decision on how many jobs are available in that industry, if there's more hiring in that industry, if there's a growth industry. The area that has the highest rate of success, I would put first. So in a branding sense. So your picture and your headline can be focused on that. Your summary can start off that way and then get into the other things that you're interested in a little bit later in the summary. And then as you work your way down, your experience, your most recent experience, should be of that industry, and then again narrowing down in least importance to the other industries that are less likely to be successful for you.
So a couple of people are asking, what do you want? I would just say, a couple of people, if you have a test caption that you want to throw out there, we don't have a ton of time left, but instead of writing a long 4 questions, think about the 4 questions. So for instance, one person says, I'm a linguist specializing in Middle Eastern and Central Asian languages.
Great.
Scrolling down, lots of people are answering now. I had another good question that I wanted to get out there while people are thinking about this too.
Yeah.
It's that issue of trying to change jobs, that maybe it hasn't been necessarily your focus, but you're wanting it to be your focus.
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, if you're currently employed, you want to be a little bit careful, because if you start making huge changes to your LinkedIn profile and it starts to look like you're not interested in that job anymore, you could have that uncomfortable conversation with a boss. So be careful if you currently have a job. If you're unemployed and you're looking to get into something new, no holds bar. And so the idea is that you are who you say you are. So barring any kind of medical certifications, you can't say I'm a doctor and not be, not have a medical degree. But if you're trying to get into a new field, you can say that you are let's say you were in accounting and you want to go into marketing. You can call yourself a marketing professional, because it's true. And so you can change the industry on your profile. This is also true with location. If you want to move, then you can change your location to the place you actually want to be, not necessarily where you are now.
Right. Well,
okay. Well, we don't have much time. Is there one complete?
There's like 17.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see. A couple were sent out publicly, so that's a great way for everybody to evaluate each other. A couple public health and environmental professionals seeking to address social inequalities and promote environmental sustainability by facilitating the collaboration of public and private organizations. Don't know if you have any feedback for that.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's 1 and 2, and now so that person would write why they're the best. So that would be a little story they would tell, and then what do you want? Do you want to work for nonprofits, for government, policy? What is it that specifically that you're looking for? I think that's really, really important to articulate.
Yeah, okay. That's a really good point, because she's given a lot about herself, but not so much where she wants to go.
That's right.
Senior legal editor, reporter specializing writing readable, timely information about the hottest legal and regulatory issues in the pharmaceutical, medical devices industry.
Nice.
So how specific? Yeah, that's a question.
That's it. I mean, the more the better. I think that's a great one. Medical device, absolutely. That's where you want to be. So what do you want to do there? What problem are you solving with medical device sales? Is it sales? Is it development? Is it adoption of new technologies by doctors? Exactly what problem are you solving?
Yeah, 3 and 4 seem to be tricky.
Yeah, 3 and 4, and then why you're the best at it. Of course, that's a story. One time when I was at band camp, that's where you put that. So anyway, I'll take a look at what you guys posted. Heather will send that to me, and if I have your permission, I could send you some feedback on it, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. But I do want to make sure you get the rest of the tools that I'm going to talk about today in the 10 minutes that we have left.
Awesome.
Now, as we saw from the eye track, the retina tracking studies, your most recent post is also incredibly important for your online reputation. Okay, so what I want to make sure is that you guys are posting regularly across all social networks. I don't know if anyone here was an MCM major, but if you were, you would have read the works of Marshall McLuhan, who was a media strategist back in the 60s and 70s, and he wrote a book called The Medium is the Message. And one of the things he says in this book is that all media is some kind of physical or psychic extension of yourself, Okay, so for example, a wheel is an extension of a tire. A CD, for him it was a record, is an extension of your ears, and a book is an extension of your eyes, etc. Well, guess what? Your online profiles are an extension of you, your personality, your voice. These are not your online resumes. I'm going to say that again. Your online profiles, your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook profile, your Twitter profile are not your online resume. Okay, it's about your voice because these are actual representations of you. Whereas a resume is, let's face it, it's your obituary. It's what you did. These things are what you are now, and that's why it's so important to post regularly. So finding your voice, and also, finding your voice is just part of digital literacy. Folks who are Gen Y and younger have grew up with this, but baby boomers, Gen Xers like me, we didn't. We learned these things later in life, and so it's less intuitive for us. So yeah, maybe we have to put a little bit more effort into it, but the results are you're going to find a job faster, okay? And that's why we're doing this. That's why we're using these tools. So in fact, I spoke with a hiring manager once. This hiring manager was in Savannah, Georgia, and she actually used Twitter and blogging to find a new hire, someone to hire. And she said to me in the interview for my blog article about this was that the coolest thing about hiring this guy, his name was Hal, is that she felt like she already knew who he was. Right? By the time he sat across the interview table from her, she knew who he was. Shouldn't that be your goal with this stuff? And social media is the way to do that. So post regularly across all three of these social networks. If you have them, if you have LinkedIn and Facebook, post. If you have Twitter, post. Every week, every day if you can. It does not take that much time. It takes 5 to 10 minutes of your day, and it's worth it, especially if you're an active job seeker. You also want to start publishing your body of work, and I'm going to go through these very quickly. Okay, so if you've ever written anything professionally or at school, you can post those things as long as they don't violate copyright or trade secrets or any kind of NDA that you've signed. As long as those things don't violate your legal agreements with your past employers, everything you've written is yours. And you can share it on websites like Scribd and DocStock, which are actually Google indexed. And so when someone Googles your name, that document is going to show up as a result. It's a great way to build your reputation. Videos, if anyone has ever done a presentation and it was videotaped, share it. Put that on YouTube. This is how people are going to get to know you. It's how hiring managers are going to say to you when they finally meet you in person, wow, I feel like I already know you. Presentations, if you've ever given presentations for class or for work or to a client or anything that demonstrates the value you can provide to your next job, your next boss, you can share those on SlideShare. This is all Google indexed. Photos on Flickr, again, professional. This comes back to your personal brand. Only show things that reinforce your personal brand. And portfolio items, for those of you in the audience here on the call who are creatives, who do visual work, this is very important to get on. You can link all of these things together. This is the web. It's the internet. These things need to get linked, and a great way to do that is to go back to your LinkedIn profile and link all of this body of work back into your LinkedIn profile, and it shows up as multimedia. It's really, really powerful. So someone is looking at your LinkedIn profile, and they can see your slideshow, and they can read a document or a report that you wrote or watch a video of you presenting and really get a good sense of who you are. Now, real quick, caring for your online reputation. Once you spend time building this up, you want to make sure that you're monitoring things over time. You use a tool like Google Alerts to do that. What it does, you just go to alerts.google.com. Again, this is going to be in the document that Heather's going to send out to you after the webinar. You go to alerts.google.com, type in your name, and what you'll find is that anytime something new about you is indexed by Google, you're going to get an alert, an email. It's going to say, hey, we picked up that article about you in the New York Times. I mean, that's great. That means someone is going to find that article when they Google you, and that's going to help you monitor your progress. Social mention is another great tool to use because it's more social media focused. If someone wrote a bad review of you or tweeted about you, you're going to know about that first with social mention. In schedule maintenance, I encourage all of my clients to create calendar reminders to go out and Google yourself. Just maintain this after you've spent so much time figuring out what your brand is and building it up. You want to make sure that that investment of time and energy is protected. So take control of your personal brand by following the steps that we talked about today. So before going online, take time to reflect on your brand. Who are you, and what are the needs of your audience? So important. If you do this, you're ahead of 99% of your competition. Once you know what that message is for you, you can apply it to your LinkedIn profiles and your Facebook profiles in order to rank for your name and build up that body of work that gets Google indexed. And finally, schedule regular maintenance so that you don't have to worry. By following these 3 steps, you'll find it easier to get meaningful work, and I think you'll feel a greater sense of control over your career. So I know that we have run out of time. I think I tried to
so many wonderful questions coming in.
Yeah.
Well, this is always an issue with this subject matter, and it is really hard to get to everything. And Joshua, you've been so wonderful to help us out here. Joshua actually has a pretty nice blog. I read it on a very regular basis, and oftentimes I repost it on our Twitter page, my Twitter feed, and he knows that today was going to be hard, and so he has offered to help you out. As I said, as he keeps saying, he has made a cheat sheet that I'm going to send out to everybody. Hey Josh, can you forward on to the slide that has your address? So Joshua, that's Joshua's website, careerenlightenment.com. He's also for brown people, offering you some special freebies, information, help. But besides that, he offers tons of great help with this. It's clearly tricky. We have tools on our website to help you somewhat. Read the blogs, keep doing your research. Recognize that it's not going to be perfect overnight. Don't fall into that 5-minute lure. You know what? We've got a lot of these questions, and we can. If you would take the time to follow us on Twitter or Facebook, we'll try and make sure, too, over the next couple of weeks that we do what we can to address some of these questions and issues. Joshua, you've been fantastic. I appreciate you joining me here today. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to offer better webinars in the future due to you being here. Any final words you want to pass out to our participants?
I think as a final piece of advice, it's great to get excited about the technology and to know that you have to get on LinkedIn. And just a word of warning is that these are just tools. And start off with a strategy. Know why you're using them. Start off with that personal brand first before you start filling out your LinkedIn profiles and posting. Knowing what your brand is going to help you so much. I can't stress that enough. I love the tools too. I love toys. But have a strategy that's going to help you feel less overwhelmed. It'll help you feel more in control.
Great. And if you're struggling with some of that, we do on our website have a couple of assessment tools. There's the coaching program, and then I know that Joshua's office offers tons of things like that too. So thanks to all of you. We are out of time, but I appreciate everyone who has stayed on the call. As I said, this will be posted, and we will send a thank you, follow up with some summary of information. And we will continue. Josh, if you can back up for 1 second. We do have other webinars coming up, another one that will also focus on LinkedIn because we heard that this was something people were interested in. Brent Grena runs EverTrue, which is an app that also connects with schools, universities. We use it at Brown and to LinkedIn. And we are joined with John Hill. I love his title, LinkedIn Evangelist, but he has great energy, and he focuses on that higher ed relationship. So, and we have been trying to add some of that into our website, and you can see a little bit more how to enhance that Brown connection that you have on LinkedIn. And then we will continue that, the career discussion with a Human Resources Vice President to really talk about connecting with companies and making that initial impression and interviewing and things like that. So thank you to all of you for joining us today, and hopefully you'll join us on either March 4th or March 12th. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.